as India has many differences from Switzerland. But what is interesting that we also have quite a few similarities. And I think this is, of course, where we could also explore where we can learn from you, or you can learn from us, or even better, where we can work together. And I think this is what I would like to talk about briefly now in the next few minutes. And just a few very brief numbers. The first number, of course, is very striking. If you look at population, we are very different, right? I guess you have, some of you have been to Switzerland, so we are very different in that regard. But if you look, for example, at the political system, it was mentioned at the beginning, we are not that far apart. We have a national government that sets certain rules, but then even the power sector is very regional. We have, what we call cantons. And the cantons actually, they are what you have as states here. They own most of the production assets. They are also typically owning at least part of the distribution system. So we have the local, the federal government that decides on certain basics of the energy strategy, whereas then the cantons, by owning the assets, have a very big say. So we have this discussion going on, and just to give you a very small idea of what the challenges there are, we have for hydropower, there are tariffs to actually use local water in the power stations. And there's a big debate going on how large these tariffs can be, because it's actually the regional governments, the states in your case, the cantons in our case, that mainly get this money, and the federal government or the whole population that pays for it. So we have many of these issues as well. I think that's very similar. If you look at the official languages, we have 4 in Switzerland. 3 are the main ones. You have 2, but of course we all know that there are many more languages in India. So we also have these barriers, of course, to overcome. I think that's also a similarity. And then when you go to energy, what I found, I mean, we have talked a lot about numbers, I don't want to go into the details, but if you think of Switzerland, many people in Switzerland think, well, the Swiss energy system is actually perfect because we only have nuclear and hydro. So it's almost CO2 free, and it's very reliable, and so it's all fine. But then if you go into the numbers, you actually see that if you look at energy, not just electricity, we import a lot of fossil fuels, mainly gas and oil. So oil for mobility, mainly gas for heating. So we are dependent on imports, and they are fossil. They're not coal. So that's then leading the way to India, where in India, of course, you import a lot of coal. And this import has been increasing in the last decades. So we are both dependent on imports, and they're both fossil. So we have to both try to, at least that's what the Swiss government tries to do, and I guess it's very similar here in India. We try to be less dependent on foreign imports, mainly fossil fuels, but we also, and then we have to do something within the country. And when you then look at the energy challenge that we have in the future, of course, so I move one forward, of course, well, the Swiss government just decided very recently that we want to be a net zero CO2 emissions country by 2050. It was a decision by the federal government. The actual implementation path is not clear yet. So we know the goal, 2050, which might seem far, but it's actually not if you're in energy and thinking about the energy system. So we don't know how to get there. And well, for India, it's a little bit different, but still, I guess the common goal we all share with the Paris Agreement. And so when you look at where are these CO2 emissions coming from today, it's completely clear that the energy sector is one of the main drivers. There's also agriculture, there's industry, but the energy system is very important. So if you want to get to net zero by 2050, it's completely clear that the energy system has to completely decarbonize, probably well before 2050, at least when you look at the pathway. But then if you look bottom up, when you think like how fast can we change the system, you realize that's not that simple to do. So we have this contradiction that we have kind of the goal by 2050, at least in Europe and Switzerland, but then when you look at technology and changing the system, it's only 30 years, so that's pretty tough. And then at the same time, we have electricity demand increasing. You have more AC here. We have more moving to electrification in the building sector. More and more buildings, especially the new ones, they are heated no longer by fossil fuels, but by heat pumps. So we're using more electricity. then we probably need to move to e-mobility. At least that's how it looks now. I mean, we will see in 20 years how it is, but at the moment, at least, it looks like. So, which is a good thing, because we will reduce CO2 emissions, it will increase efficiency, etc. But it means we need more electricity. So we have this, at the same time, increasing demand. And then, so we have this whole energy sector that needs to move to net zero. In Switzerland, we have an additional challenge that we want to exit nuclear power. That's also a political thing that is happening at the moment. So we even not only have to increase electricity production, we also have to supplement the system once we got rid of our nuclear power stations, which is about the same, well, actually earlier. So we have all these challenges. And how do we do it? I mean, it's completely clear, and that's again a similarity between India and Switzerland. We have to have more renewable energy sources. It's unclear how big it needs to be, and I know India has a very challenging goal that has been set there, but I think it's the same thing. And when you look at the potentials of the different sources, yes, of course, there's biomass. Yes, of course, there's maybe geothermal in Switzerland, but it's unclear. Yes, there's wind. But in all this, we see, both from a practical point of view, as well as in our simulations that we are doing, that PV will play the main role. At least that's how it looks like. So again, both for Switzerland and for India, we need to understand how is PV coming into the play, and not just by the numbers, because of course you can set goals and can say like, okay, we need to buy this many panels, but how do you actually make a system work where you have a huge share of renewables? And it has been mentioned before, and I think this is, if you take all this together, this is one of the main challenges that we have. How do we make a system that is electrified? So we have electric mobility, we have, in our case in Switzerland, electrified building sector. You have a big share of renewables, especially PV. You might be able to combine that with hydropower. That's very important in Switzerland, in India, and in certain areas as well. You have some nuclear, you have some wind. How do you connect that? And what is interesting, I mean, you have been talking about distribution grids. I think what is really interesting is when you combine the whole system. And you have to look at the transmission level and the distribution level at the same time, and how do they operate. So you have certain things that you can do on the distribution side, and that's very important. You have certain things, especially a security of supply, for example, that you can do on the central transmission system. But how do they interact? So again, like to give you a very concrete example, when we move more into PV, we need storage. And the storage could be batteries, for example. At least that's a trend that we see now. We have more and more decentralized batteries, neighborhood batteries, maybe not in each house, but in neighborhood level. And these batteries, they are there to store from day to night, but they also could supply services to the central system, for example, for stability control. So how do you interact? How does the local battery know when it has to provide power to the central system or auxiliary services to the central system? And when does the distribution system operator know that he can allow that, or when he can't? And this is a thing that is also part of this smartness, because quite often we talk about smart grids, but when you only look at the distribution grid, which is fine, and if you have mini, microgrids, that's also how it does work. But in larger areas, you are connected to the grid, so we need to understand this. And if PV takes only a few percent, 5, 10, maybe to 20, 30%, it's fine. We can go as we did before. But as soon as we reach higher shares, if you go to at least in power and during certain times, when you go above 50%, it doesn't work like it did before. So there I see a huge challenge, and also I think we need solutions that are not here today. So that brings me to what we need today. I already mentioned most of it. We need the integration of renewables. We need to integrate e-mobility. We also need to look at multi-energy systems, especially in Switzerland. That's something that is being taught quite a lot. But we see that coming more and more also in the future, because one thing you also need to do, not only day-night storage, but also weekly storage, seasonal storage, and for example, hydrogen could play a role there. We don't know yet if it ever will be feasible also economically. Technically, it's feasible, yes. So how do you integrate different energy carriers into the play? In Switzerland, there's a big discussion about the gas grids, the gas infrastructure, natural gas infrastructure. Can we use it to store energy? Technically, it's possible, yes, but does it make sense in a system point of view? Does it make sense economically? This is completely unclear, and there are many things going on there that is beyond the state of the art today. Storage I already mentioned. And in terms of technology, a lot of things are already there, so we don't need the killer technology. Most of the things are there. We have storage, we have, well, not seasonal, but we have short-term storage, we have PV, we have wind, we have the system that works today. So many things are there, but it's really the integration. And then there are a couple of things that we don't have, and I mentioned seasonal storage before. If you go into the mobility sector, we don't have synthetic fuels, and there are some applications where electric mobility doesn't make sense, and aviation is one of them. I think we will take, we won't fly with batteries even in the next 20, 30 years, so we need something there. We don't know yet what it is. Also cargo, if you take ships, if you take trains, if you take other modes of transportation, there it's also not clear yet. Will it be hydrogen? Will it be other means? This is also a big challenge and sometimes forgotten because we all look at the electricity, but if we look at the overall energy consumption, this is an important part and it needs to be done. And so I think it's for me, like kind of like looking everything together, it's really on one side the tools, how to connect everything that we need. We need modeling tools that both look at distribution system and also on transmission level. And we also need to connect that to climate models because this is something that more and more in the future with climate change, also our environment will change. And there, just to give you two examples, what we are doing at the Swiss Federal ETH Zurich, as mainly people know it. Maybe I also briefly introduce what I do there. I'm the executive director of the Energy Science Center at ETH Zurich. We connect about 60 professors in the domain of energy at our school in Switzerland, and we do a multitude of projects, and what our specialty is really the interdisciplinarity, because we bring engineers to talk to economists, we have urban planners talk to engineers and everybody together. And we have two big projects I just want to mention. One is called Nexus E. Basically what it is it's a modeling tool where we have from the bottom distribution systems all the way up to macroeconomics in one system. So we have the different time resolutions here from minutes when we look at security of supply to macroeconomics, decades. And at the same time we have different levels of aggregation. We have the distribution systems and then we have the overall system. So we are really integrating all these different models into one integrated energy system modeling platform. And the second thing that is really more on the integration of renewables, and it's the hardware, we have a renewable energy management and real-time control platform, how we call it, where we connect, together with EMPA and PSI, two of our system institutions in Zurich, where we connect all different kind of technologies, all different kind of energy carriers into one real-time measurement and control platform where we can test new algorithms, where we can go in with blockchain or with anything you want, but with real components, but not in an actually real system, but in a real-life system, I would call it, almost real-life system. So these are just two examples of what we are doing. And yeah, just to repeat myself, I think technology is mainly there. We have some missing dots, especially in storage. We need strong collaborations, also across disciplines and across companies. And for this, we need also tools and demonstrators. Thank you.